Missy, feel free
Do we have people?
to start the recording.
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Do we have some people on this? 25, that's great. Pretty good. Cool.
Well, I'll wait until the appointed moment.
Yes, we got about 2 minutes.
For those of you here in person, I would normally stand up in front for eye contact, but we have the video camera for our virtual attendees, so I am parked over here just so we can make ourselves visible to those that might be attending virtually.
Warren, make sure you talk into the mic.
You bet. Well, good evening and welcome to all of our attendees here this evening for the fourth open house of the Olympia Regional Airport Master Plan Update. I am Warren Hendrickson. I am the Airport Senior Manager for the airport and a Port of Olympia employee. To our virtual attendees online, the Zoom meeting that you are watching tonight will probably have a different appearance than you may be used to if you are a regular attendee of our Port Commission meetings. It will have a different look, the way the cameras are oriented, and partly it's due to technical reasons. The recording of this meeting in a Zoom format is more easily uploaded to our airport website for future review and discussions at a later time. So please note too that all the storyboards that are visible here in this room for the in-person attendees are also available to you on the Port of Olympia Airport website. There is an Airport Master Plan Update tab, and just look for the storyboards and you will see the same presentations that are being seen here this evening. Any further questions can be directed to us later on, and you will see what those email addresses are, and we'll be happy to follow up. But for those of you in person as well as online, it's great to see so much interest in our county's biggest airport, and we're glad to be here. A little background on myself. I am personally one of the newest public servants to join the Port of Olympia. I have been here for just 3 months. I have been in aviation my entire professional life. I have been in airport management for over a decade. I was most recently the airport director at Bremerton National Airport. I am thrilled to be here. This is a vibrant community, the capital city airport. One little piece of trivia that you may not be aware of: Thurston County only has 3 public use airports open to all aviation users. We are the only ones with paved runways. The other 2 are grass. There are several private airports around the county, but as the capital city airport representing the entire state and close to the home of our seat of government, it plays a very important role in the community. Also, there probably is a great recognition, especially in light of the boards that you see both online and here in the room with regard to the financial implications of this airport. This airport operates in the black. It requires no taxpayer support whatsoever. In fact, even our grant funding that we receive from the Federal Aviation Administration and the State Aviation Agency are funded by aviation user fees. So no taxes support the airport. And in fact, we are an economic generator for the Port of Olympia and the community. I personally am very excited about the possibilities that you see on the storyboards around the room. We're looking at maintaining this airport and turning it into the jewel that it deserves to be. Pavement here on this airport goes back to 1943. So as you look forward, we're going to maintain the same footprint of the airport. We're not moving the airport fences. The focus will be on maintaining our infrastructure and pavement, more efficient lighting. We still have incandescent lighting in this day and age of LED lighting and solar capability. We'll be improving that, increased hangar capacity and increased business opportunities. And you will see all of that in the presentation that will unfold shortly. I do want to take a little bit of time just to explain what this meeting is and what this meeting is not. There is a great deal of confusion, understandably. I learned this evening, I haven't seen it myself, but I understand a Facebook group in Thurston County actually said that the purpose of tonight's meeting was to talk about the Commercial Aviation Coordinating Commission. Unfortunately, nothing could be further from the truth. Unfortunately, nobody reached out to me for fact checks. I've asked if anybody happens to be a member of that Facebook group to ask the owners of that group to please get in touch with me, and I will be glad to sort out the difference. But briefly, and we'll talk more about this during our presentation as well. The Commercial Aviation Coordinating Commission is a completely separate, different entity and has a completely separate purpose than the Port of Olympia, Olympia Regional Airport, and the Airport Master Plan update tonight. The CAC, as we call it, was created by state legislature action in 2019. And its purpose is to find another location, whether an existing airport or a new site, to add to commercial capacity in the Puget Sound region, actually statewide, but the focus has become Puget Sound. For anybody that's traveled out of SeaTac lately will know the reasons for that. A second entity that is important to understand is WSDOT Aviation as the state aviation agency also is in the process of doing an aviation system plan update. That update is done every 5 to 7 years, is funded by the Federal Aviation Administration, and its purpose is to look statewide as where is the state right now aviation-wise? What is the forecast? What does it need? The data from that aviation system plan update is in fact feeding some of the research and analysis required by the CAC, but they are, again, two separate entities, two separate purposes. And then now we come to the Airport Master Plan update, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting. We are focused only on Olympia Regional Airport and how we can best serve Thurston County. Tonight, therefore, we will not accept any public comment on the CAC. We will share with you during the presentation more information about this and alternative means of providing that public comment. If anybody would like to sign up to speak to the Airport Master Plan update, we do have a clipboard in the back of the room. Please do so. But again, we won't accept comments on the CAC this evening. So now allow me to introduce our consultant team, without which none of this would have been possible. I've known all of them for anywhere from 7 to a dozen years, and I've worked together with them before, and we couldn't ask for a better team to support this master plan update for the Port of Olympia. So starting at the top, Leah Whitfield is the president and the senior aviation planner for Aviation Planning Group as the lead consultant team of this master plan update, also serves as the project manager for this entire project. Supporting her is Darren Murata here on the left. He is a subconsultant, works for Dow Incorporated, is the supporting engineer to this project, and he is our graphic artist and designer, along with Zach Duval, the senior aviation planner with Aviation Planning Group. Around the room, I would also like to introduce some other port staff and employees. So we have Emily Madston, our communications and marketing individual, is Joy Johnston here too, as well, port communications. My incredible assistant and office administrator at the airport is Lori Watson. And she's the one that answers the phone when you call into the airport. And she has been here for decades and is literally my right-hand man in running the airport. So in that case, now let me go ahead and turn it over to Leah. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Great.
Let's begin.
Thank you, Warren, for that great introduction. And thank you to each of you for your interest in the Airport Master Plan update and for those of you online as well. So just wanted to note that this presentation is being recorded and it will be posted on the Port's Airport Master Plan update website following this meeting. We've done that after each of our previous open houses that were hosted virtually only via Zoom. All participants online are on mute and we'll keep you on mute throughout the duration of the presentation. Just a note for virtual attendees, if you have a comment or a question, you may submit those to ampupdate@portolympia.com, the master plan update web email address, or you may also, there is a chat box, I think that says questions. You can also submit those there. And if you submit those there, they will be read during the comment period. Again, as Warren mentioned, comments from the live audience will be heard at the conclusion of our presentation, and any questions will be answered at the on the Q&A on the Port's website following this meeting. So the consultant team will just be jotting down your questions, and then we will be posting that update to the Q&A document. So I wanted to just touch on what the guiding principles are kind of for our public involvement plan throughout the entirety of the Airport Master Plan update. As you'll see, and those of you that have attended other meetings, we're about 18 months into the Airport Master Plan update process. And so at the beginning of that, we created what we call a public involvement plan for the project. And what the Port has used in the past is what's called an IAP2 spectrum. And so this is a guiding document and principles that looks at how the public can engage throughout a project's life cycle. And so as you see around the red box, we're in the inform and consult part of this spectrum. So it goes from inform all the way to empower, but this process is really driven by FAA standards and what the FAA requires through grant assurances of the Port. And so we're in that inform and consult. So tonight's agenda, Warren touched on some of this already, but so we're going to talk about the studies underway, just to, again, kind of reiterate the differentiators between the various studies that are happening. We're going to give a brief update on what's called the Habitat Conservation Plan that the Port and the City of Tumwater are working on. We're going to review the master plan update process overall, as well as our goals that if you're here in the room, you saw on the board as well. And then we're going to touch on a revised preferred alternative. So at our May public open house, at kind of the conclusion of the primary part of the airport master plan, we had a preferred alternative identified in May. We've since made a few tweaks to that, and we wanted to share that again with the public tonight. And then we're going to talk about emerging technologies and what's happening in the world of aviation and how that's going to impact the airport going forward. And then the main purpose of tonight's public open house is the commercial service feasibility study for the Port of Olympia's Olympia Regional Airport. And so we're going to talk about that. And then we'll go through next steps and then have the comment period. So the Commercial Aviation Coordination Commission, otherwise known as the CAC, is again a group that was created by the legislature to develop recommendations to meet Washington's state critical aviation system capacity needs. And so tonight, the focus of our meeting is not the CAC. The consultant team is not associated with the work of the CAC or WashDOT's aviation system plan. So any comments concerning that work should be addressed to the CAC team at cac.wsdot.wa.gov. So other ongoing port studies include the Bush Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan, and then of course this master plan update. So the Bush Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan, or the HCP for short, is really focused on protecting and mitigating impacts to species protected by the Endangered Species Act in and around the airport. And so that study is kind of ongoing. It's been going on for the past few years. It actually started in advance of the airport master plan. And so our teams have kind of been coordinating and sharing some information, but it's a separate study not being conducted by our team. And then of course, the main focus of tonight is the master plan update, which is focused on meeting the aviation demand at the Olympia Regional Airport. So for the Habitat Conservation Plan, we asked their project team to give us a brief update of where they are in the overall process. So they're currently finalizing the conservation and development policy details. And then they're responding to the comments that they've received from both U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, as well as Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife on the overall HCP. And then they expect that in November, they're going to have that revised full draft document to the Port and the City of Tumwater. And then the draft to the agencies and the public will immediately follow that process. So look for that document likely by the end of the year or early 2023. So what is the airport master plan update process and what does this all mean? So this is a grant funded project. So it's funded by the Federal Aviation Administration. And it's one of those things that the FAA requires periodically, about every 10 years for an airport. And it's a comprehensive study that looks at the airport's short, medium, and long-term development plans to meet that future aviation demand. So it's really a 20-year look. So while we might do it every 10 years, we're looking at 20 years. And it has a very prescriptive process that we follow through what's called an FAA advisory circular that really details how we go through this process. So our overall goals throughout the entire airport master plan update have been to, again, meet that aviation demand as required by the FAA, meet FAA design standards, and really prepare the Olympia Regional Airport for future development. And of course, also prepare the airport for emerging technologies. If you've watched the news, we know that there's a lot of exciting things happening in aviation right now. We want to make sure that the airport is there to take advantage of those emerging aviation technologies. And then also just continued airport self-sufficiency. As Warren mentioned, the airport is currently self-sufficient. They operate in the black, and we want to make sure that continues. So where have we kind of been and where are we going from here? So we started this process in March of 2021, and we started through the investigation phase, moved through solutions in the latter half of 2021 and the first half of 2022. And then since May, we've been working through the implementation phase of the airport master plan. So we're looking at that capital improvement program, what types of projects need to happen, how do we fund those projects, and then putting that all together in what's called an airport layout plan set, which is those maps that really guide any development that happens at the airport. And the FAA has to buy off on that, and they actually physically sign that document. So it's an important step. And then, of course, the draft and final report. And you'll see there's some graphics there that show our public engagement throughout when we've held technical advisory committee meetings, public open houses, and then this feasibility study meeting here in October. So we do expect by February that we'll have a draft report out for public comment. So the revised master plan update preferred alternative, as I mentioned to some of you during the open house portion of tonight's meeting, is we presented this in May earlier this year, but since then we've made a few changes. And so we wanted to bring this back to everybody's attention for full transparency on what's changed. So the main changes that have happened are the addition of a turf runway and a relocation of what we call taxiway Foxtrot. So if you look at the primary runway 1735, and you look just above that, you'll see a very narrow rectangle there that's the turf runway, and then also taxiway Foxtrot was then just shifted out a little bit. And there's some benefits to shifting taxiway Foxtrot out a little bit so it aligns properly to cross the crosswind runway and connect right in. So it'll be a smoother transition for taxiing and a little bit simpler. And then we also added we have existing T hangers at the top of the page in white, and you'll see some little just red additions on the end of those white boxes in those buildings. And so we're just looking at, we have some space to add some additional hanger capacity onto our existing buildings. So that's one of those things. And then I don't think those are really the main changes that we've had in the preferred alternative. Everything else is as you saw previously. So emerging technologies, it's an exciting time to be in aviation. There's a lot happening. If you've seen the news in the past couple of weeks, there was some exciting news out of the state of Washington because Eviation's electric commuter plane, the Alice, made its first test flight out of Moses Lake. And so it just goes to show how we're continuing to progress in aviation and that these new emerging aircraft are being tested and they are starting to fly. And we do expect for this to continue, for them to actually come into implementation in the next 10 years. So this is a figure out of an Airport Cooperative Research Program report, and it just kind of shows here we are in 2022. They expected the first electric commercial flight, that air taxi, to happen, which just happened with the Alice. And then as we move towards 2025, we're going to look for those aircraft to be certified by the FAA for operation. And then by 2030, we're going to see more adoption by the regional airlines and private owners to really embrace these electric aircraft. And so again, as we move towards 2040, we're really going to see the emergence of this technology. So outside of electric aircraft, we also have sustainable aviation fuels. So they've been around for a handful of years now, but it's been really slow to get started to ramp up the manufacturing of this type of fuel, but it is happening, especially at the major airports. So it's fuel that's created from waste oils or plant or animal fats, and it is approved by the FAA, and it can be blended with existing jet fuel. So this fuel is really being used by the large aircraft, the jet aircraft. But there's also the recent approval of the alternative to what's called 100 low lead. So 100 low lead is the type of fuel that the smaller aircraft, so those prop aircraft that you see flying around, that's what those prop aircraft are using. And the FAA recently approved an unleaded fuel for that piston fleet. And so there is an organization called the Eliminate Aviation Gasoline Lead Emissions, EAGLE. It's an initiative of various aviation organizations, including the FAA, with a goal to meet the objective to eliminate leaded fuel by 2030. And the FAA has recently approved a replacement for that 100 low lead. So they are moving forward with that. But of course, that's subject to regulatory requirements and production and distribution, which very similar to SAF. It's going to be a slow process, but an alternative is coming and the rollout is going to happen. We just have to be patient. So another technology that's really kind of taking the aviation industry by storm right now is the US or the eVTOL, so electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And so these aircraft are very quiet aircraft. So you wouldn't think a helicopter. These are whisper quiet, about the decibels of a refrigerator. But the FAA recently unveiled their regulations for what's called a vertiport, which is very similar to a heliport. Or helipad, and we have just kind of an image there of that. But it's really just setting those standards of how much space do you need for these aircraft to take off and land. So it's a pretty significant step for airports to be able to start to plan ahead. So the commercial service feasibility study, so that's kind of the main highlight of tonight's purpose of the master plan, public open house. And so this is a portion of the master plan, but it is separate. So it's going to be a separate appendix to the airport master plan update. It's not one of the main chapters. It is being funded by the FAA. We have a 100% grant for this study. And again, as Warren stated, it's not related to the CAC or the WSDOT Aviation System Plan. And the purpose of it is really it's a preliminary evaluation of the airport's compatibility to meet FAA's requirements for regional commercial service. So the airport has had commercial service in the past. So can we still be compatible and meet those FAA requirements? And we're really focused on the feasibility of what the existing airfield can accommodate, especially in regard to the emerging aircraft that are coming in the future. So it is a component of the master plan. It consists of a passenger and operation forecast, facility requirements, and then alternatives. So commercial service is often referred to in the aviation world as Part 139. And Part 139 is really a term by the FAA, and it's a certification of an airport. And it's subject to all sorts of additional regulations, but kind of in the simplest form, Part 139 certification must be requested by the airport sponsor and approved by the FAA before commercial flights can take place. And it only applies to scheduled flights of 9 or more passengers or unscheduled flights of 30 or more passengers. And the airports are required to meet a lot of additional standards, but one of those is aircraft rescue firefighting. So you have to have what's called ARF, and they have to stand by for all of those flights. And then other things like annual compliance inspections, just much more detailed information must be collected and monitored for a Part 139 airport. So I'm going to go ahead and let Zach talk about the aviation forecast for Part 139.
Thank you, Leah. So when we started the process of doing forecasts for what Olympia Regional might support throughout the forecast period, we started with a lot of assumptions. And the first was that overarching the entire process was the assumption that the airport would not become a commercial hub. That it would be regional service, it would be small scale. The largest aircraft that we have in our forecast are regional jets, 50 to 60 seat aircraft, and those are only some of them that we included in our forecast. Another assumption we made was that the sustainable aviation, the emerging technologies that Leah was talking about, that those are going to continue to grow. That's going to continue to be an option. So those sustainable aviation fuels, retrofitting current aircraft to be hybrid, to be electric, and the emerging aircraft, the 10, 20, 30 seat aircraft that are fully electric, and the eVTOLs. So we went with, we looked at two primary elements. The first is regional service from the airport to a hub in the Western United States. So an LAX, Portland, a McCarran in Las Vegas, San Francisco, and how it might, Olympia Regional might take a little bit of the demand away from SeaTac to handle a couple of those flights a day and also give the region a connection. But it would just be a regional jet flight from the airport to that airport and back, not anywhere else. And then the other element is a point-to-point regional service. So other airports of similar sizes on smaller aircraft, retrofitted Cessna Caravans or the eVTOLs or other light transport aircraft that might be hybrid electric, they might be fully electric. And so to forecast it, we went in with another assumption that there's an upper limit based on the existing capacity of the airfield. We would not look at the option of extending the runway or having a wider runway. This is all exactly what the airport as it is, or as it will be improved with the taxiway realignments and the enhanced lighting, what it can support like that. And we also did not want to allow the forecast for commercial service to in any way impede the general aviation of the airport or the future full capacity. So we reached an upper limit that, combined with the forecast for the general aviation side of things, still don't get to a point where the airport would in any way be constrained through the forecast period. And we had made an assumption that the commercial service probably wouldn't happen before until after 2030. If you see on our forecast on the next slide, we start them at 2035. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the general aviation improvements are the priority. And another is that these emerging technologies, sustainable aviation, we're not quite sure exactly how that's going to play out. So we didn't want to say that's going to happen right at 2025 or 2028. So we had several inputs. Some were growth rates that came from other forecast sources, such as the FAA's terminal area forecast. As I mentioned, also the airfield's existing capacity was a way to limit the forecasts. And another was, when doing the point-to-point regional analysis, we distributed the flights that we anticipated into several airports throughout the state and the region, and the distance to those airports. And when I talk about these airports, I mean similar sized airports, not currently commercial airports, but ones that might be able to support these flights, 10 to 15 to 20 seat. And the distance of those determined how we distributed on the different aircraft. So by 2040, we anticipate that the airport might support about 288,000 annual employments on about 12,800 operations. And that 12,800 operations is about 20% of the operations that the airport has historically supported annually. And again, that combined with, apologies, I said employment, and Leah reminded me to explain that to everybody. Employment is just a person getting on the aircraft. An individual passenger, essentially. And back to the operational count, that 12,800, even combined with the forecast for the general aviation side, still has the total operations for the airport, the total flights below a level where the airport would start needing to think about any expansion. All of that is still extremely within the capacity of the airport now and forecasted into the future. And the pie charts up there show how these things might spread out. 20% of these flights would probably be on regional jets, which are the ones going to a Western hub. But those, because they are larger, support far more of the passengers. And we're anticipating a lot of these flights being on those the electric hybrids or the vertical takeoff and landing as regional point-to-point flights to other airports that could potentially support the same type of activity that is being studied for Olympia Regional. And at the bottom are just a few examples of those emerging technologies. The one that catches my eye the most is in the middle, there's a company, Hart Aerospace, and that is them looking at a twin piston, fully electric 30-seat aircraft that they're currently developing. They were developing a 19-seat aircraft, and then they aimed higher because they realized they can ramp that up to something with even more capacity. So now we'll go on to the alternative concepts that we see over there, and Darren will talk you through those.
Thanks, Zach. So, based on the forecasts and the requirements that were identified, we generated a drawing that you see in front of you of showing what this could look like for commercial service. So just to orient you, the drawing that you're looking at right now is a close-up of the northwest side of the airport, and north is facing to the left. And then down at the bottom left of the page is Terminal Street. So that is where, as a user, you would be coming in, entering the environment, and you can see there's a short-term parking lot and a long-term parking lot there. We forecast a need for about 600 stalls between the two parking lots. So there's a parking stalls along with electric vehicle charging, as well as potentially this would be a location where we could explore solar canopy on top of the parking lots. And then as you come up, you see a drop-off curbside along a terminal building there in red. So there, or sorry, I guess it's more of a pinkish color there. So the terminal there, along with multiple parking stalls for both hybrid and electric aircraft, and then also some jet bridges to regional jet parking stalls. So the number of stalls is based on what we came up with in the forecast. There you see ATCT, that's the existing air traffic control tower. And then along the side there, you see 3 of the ETOL vertiports. So those are 100 by 100 areas for the vertical takeoff and landing. And based on our forecast, we wanted to allocate space for 3 VTOL spots there, 1 on the east side of the terminal and 2 on the west side. Just a couple other things I wanted to point out in this drawing. Over on the east side of the apron, we designated a spot for potential aircraft de-icing. And then towards the left side of the page, some areas for potential cargo, ground support facilities, and aviation-related industrial. Next slide, please. So this is the same drawing, but it just allocates some additional space for future terminal expansion and future aircraft parking. So we just wanted to make sure whatever layouts we developed also reserve space in case there was a need in the future for additional expansion of terminal facilities or additional expansion of aircraft parking.
Thanks, Darren. So kind of where do we go from here now that we've presented the commercial service development alternative for the feasibility study is really to finalize that feasibility study that will be an appendix to the airport master plan update report. We need to finalize, now that we have the preferred development alternative for the overall master plan update, finalize the airport layout plan, which is again the set of maps that the FAA will formally approve and sign, submit those to the FAA. Their review process can be very slow. It's several months. And then publish that draft master plan update report, hopefully by February, for public review and comment. So that's really the last things to do as part of the airport master plan update process. So we'll be wrapping this up in the coming months, and this is our last formal public open house as well. We'll be accepting comments throughout until we publish that draft report.
Okay, so this is your opportunity now to come forward and make a comment on the airport master plan update. So for those that are in attendance, I will call you in the order in which you've signed up. And then after the live public comments are complete, then we will read the public comments made by those online. We have a few dozen attendees online, I understand. So if those of you are online wish to make a comment, please write them into the question box now, and that way they'll be there and visible. But in any case, we will take those comments at any point in time in the future. We ask that speakers take no more than 3 minutes. We ask that, again, you restrict your comments to the topic of tonight's meeting, the Olympia Regional Airport Master Plan update, and comments on the CAC or the Aviation System Plan will not be accepted. Normal decorum rules, of course, for public meetings. No individual port employer, consultant, team member should be the focal point of the comments. And of course, we always want to be respectful of each other. With regard to questions that may be asked, this is probably as hard for us as it is hard for you, because you will have a question and we would like to answer, but based upon the comments and the storyboards that have already taken place this evening here in person, and for those online, we absolutely want to make sure we get it right. We give a consistent, standardized answer. So we will note the questions that are asked, and then we will create a formal FAQ, frequently asked questions, or Q&A document that we will post on the airport website. So that may not be immediate gratification, and I will resist the urge to answer questions, which I like to do, but we will move forward and do our best to do that. But rest assured, your questions will be recorded, they will be noted, they will be answered, and they will be addressed accordingly. So with that, let us begin. I have from here in the room, Sharon Coons. So if you would, you don't need to be directly on top of the microphone, but just make sure it's within a few inches, and we'll be able to make sure that everyone can hear you, especially those online.
Thank you. Is that loud enough, or do I need to take the mask off? No, clear? Okay. Hi, a couple of points. As I understand it, the last environmental impact statement done for this airport was about 1994. Am I correct in that? Do people know? I think that's the last time. At that point, the airport or the port indicated there were no major changes. In fact, no changes were planned for the airport. Since 1994, there have been several changes in the airport. And they've been incremental, and I believe against the SEPA rules, because they've been piecemealed separately. And I'm hoping that at least before we go much further in this process, we'll be doing a serious look at environmental impacts. I think it's extremely important and really discouraging that it's gone this long without having happened. The other thing that I find a little discouraging is I forget what you call it, but the matrix by that group that said, we're in the inform and consult stage. I forget what the title of that is, but they had some further choices out there, including collaborate and empower. And that's what I'd like to see our port do with every policy change, and certainly something as major as an airport. To stop at informing and consulting is just an insult to the people who support this port and live in this community, I believe. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but I think it's important that you take that seriously, and that you maybe reconsider on that and reach out and collaborate more, both in this process and in future ones. And empower the people who are actually affected by all this, which is us. Thank you so much. And thank you for the good presentation. It was very clear, you folks.
Thank you, Ms. Coons. We don't have anybody else that signed up on the public comment period from those in attendance. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Please step forward, sir, to the podium and announce your name.
Good evening. I'm Bob Jacobs. I'm a 48-year resident of Olympia, and I live at 720 Governor Stevens Avenue in Olympia. I own 3 pieces of real estate in the county. They happen by chance all to be right in the approaches to the airport. So I have a particular interest in this, as well as a general policy interest. I'm assuming that there may be room in this plan for policy statements, as well as just the physical layout. And so my brief comments will include that. First of all, I think it's important for this plan to include a very clear statement that we do not want the SeaTac overflow here. I know the Port Commission has already taken a position on that. It's a very important policy piece, and I think it deserves to be repeated over and over again. Secondly, I would like to suggest that a statement be in there about limitations on especially loud aircraft. I have no problem at all with the corporate jet type service. I have no problem at all with small helicopters, with little private single engine aircraft. That's all just fine. But some of these military helicopters, the double rotor ones, I think they're called Hueys, are just impossible. They're so loud and they fly very low and very slow. And they rattle dishes. I think we should have a policy to severely control those. The Army has plenty of space up in the airfields that they own. Finally, just let me make a comment. There were two statements this evening that the airport receives no tax support and it operates in the black. The Port of Olympia has a very long history. I mean, 40 years of history that I'm aware of understating or misstating or elaborating on its financial performance. To my knowledge, it is not true that this is a self-sustaining airport. Clearly, the control tower is part of the airport, but it's funded by the federal government. And last I talked to a representative of the port, there was a $10 million cumulative deficit from years of losses. So let's not be saying that unless we really have the facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Is there anybody else in attendance that would like to make a comment? Mr. Pearson.
Thank you. Jim Pearson, local resident. I just had one question. Who are the primary users of the airport? What do they look like? Are they, I mean, we mostly see the corporate execs. Is it that? Is it government officials? What percentage of local residents that are not government or execs are using the airport? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, we will make note of that and make sure that that's included in our FAQs. Yes, sir. Another comment.
My name is Joel Hanson. I live at 625 73rd Avenue. My property line, my neighbor is the airport. And so I just wanted to back up what Mr. Jacobs said about the loud aircraft. It shakes the windows, particularly the helicopters. And they'll come, sometimes they're doing training, I don't know why, but they'll come in the middle of the night and it'll be 4, 5, 6 of them in a row. They'll come, they'll land at the Olympia Airport, and then they'll take off again and leave. And it shakes my house. So it's an impact to people. And if we have an opportunity to say thanks, but no thanks, I'd like us to do that. And then the second thing, just appreciate the work on getting the lead out of aircraft fuels, because that lead is falling on my yard and on my garden. And I'd appreciate for that process to move as fast as possible to get it out of the aircraft fuel. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Anyone else this evening here live? Okay, Leah, if you would, I will turn it over to you. And if you can read those comments made by those that are attending online.
I'm going to do my best. It might be actually easier. No, it's okay. Scroll down and get the rest. Okay. Sorry, I have to operate within the constraints of the reach of the microphone, so I'll read from my phone. So looks like the first one is an anonymous attendee that says, where can we find plans for the location of the regional airport and flight patterns, landing and taking off? So I'm going to presume when you say the regional airport, you mean Olympia Regional Airport. So thank you for that question. The next one is from someone named JC. As the owner admin of the Residents Against a New Airport in Thurston County Facebook group referenced, I have been repeatedly clarifying this to users that though tonight's meeting involved the CAC when we knew it did not, it was challenging to overcome this perception, but we tried. We repeatedly asked residents if they did not attend, or if they did attend, apologies, if they did attend, to be respectful. Thank you, Jeff Cohen. The next one is from Kelly Harkness. What led to the idea to pave over a whole community for this airport? The next one is from Sue Danver. Migrating birds migrate on the east slope of Capitol Forest. It is an important Pacific North-South flyway. Today, I saw a flock of snow geese above the eastern edge of Capitol Forest. Migrating birds are protected by the Migrating Birds Act. They fly north-south about 5 miles from Olympia Regional Airport. A graphic of planes' presumed flight paths would be helpful. A CAC statement was that flight paths near the North Cascades or forest are desirable. Is this also true for Olympia Regional Airport? How will you meet the migratory bird law? Thank you for that. Let me go back and take another picture. The next one is from, I think, Jeff Cohen, JC. Thank you for clarifying, and sorry that some of our folks have been a distraction. Many have just learned about the CAC's proposal and are freaking out. Then saw that there was an airport meeting and assumed too much, despite us correcting them multiple times. Kelly Harkness, if you're planning on expanding the existing airport, why is the news reporting that you're wanting to pave over most of Yelm Highway? Next one is from Pat Mahoney. Has the board taken into account and studied the effects of adding regional jet aircraft noise on the surrounding area? Bob Vadis, I apologize if I'm saying your name incorrect. Please note that electric power through Puget Sound Energy is still partly based on coal power, although that will change in a few years. And hydropower is a very damaging environmentally, including heavy greenhouse gas production in reservoirs and blockage and lost habitat for migratory fishes, which is why the lower Snake River dams have been considered for breaching. Hopefully, Olympia Airport electric planes will run on more eco-friendly electric power. Get my steps in. The next one is from Justin Vinson. My folks are working class people. They worked their entire lives, raised 3 kids, and worked full time with a dream of one day having a small farm property. They're nearing retirement now and recently achieved their lifelong dream of owning and living on a nice rural piece of property. Actually, I think this is about the CAC. Now they're facing what is effectively an eviction by the state to bulldoze their, yeah, that's a CAC comment, so we'll skip that one. I apologize. Sue Danver, I would recommend that you map the area of endangered species conservation areas and parks near Olympia Regional Airport, some with endangered species nearby, including Miller's Sylvania Park, Black River, NWR, OSF, and Uncommon Butterfly, Mima Mounds Natural Area, West Rocky Prairie, WDFW Preserve, and many Capital Land Trust lands along the Black River. How will you protect these lands from noise and pollution in the near future? These lands or others nearby may be candidates for Habitat Conservation Plan endangered species. What are your thoughts about threats to these species with plain growth forecasts? Jan Witt asked, why were taxpayers, neighborhood associations, and private citizens of Thurston County not included as a stakeholder on the technical advisory committee of the master plan update, whereas users of the airport were included on this committee? Brian Paranod said, what is the planned throughput for the future connection flights to SeaTac or other airports? I fully support being able to get a connection from Olympia to SeaTac, but will there be enough flights to make this reasonable? For example, not useful if it's once or twice a day. Jan Witt, I'm concerned about the de-icing area on the plains. The airport lies above an aquifer. What are their plans for assuring the de-icing solutions do not drip off aircraft as they approach and depart the airport? One more. Sue Danver, many large warehouses are being constructed next to Olympia Regional Airport. Please estimate commodity flights versus passenger flights. I see this as a concern. Thank you to everyone who made a comment or asked a question through the virtual Zoom open house. We will take again these questions and put those into our Q&A document that we have on the website. I think some of them may have already been answered. If you do take a look at the website, there is a Q&A document already on there, but we will go ahead and update that document in the next week or so.
Missy, would you return the last slide of the deck that shows the airport master plan update email address, if that's possible?
It's going to be, I can click through if you got it. Too fast. One more, I think we'll have it.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So for those in attendance and for those especially online, comments are welcome at any time. We appreciate the input. We appreciate your participation. Thank you for coming here tonight. For those that are here live in the room, we will continue to be available to share our storyboards and take your additional comments and questions. And unless there's any final comments from our consulting team, thank you for your participation. Excellent work tonight and greatly appreciative of everybody's participation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much.